to the NESN Soccer Show. I'm Mark, your Marcus. Marcus, one of our favorite soccer clubs, has failed to qualify for a major tournament. The New England Revolution are not in the MLS Cup playoffs.
That's not bad.
Yeah, I figured I'd start with a joke because this is going to be
bad.
this is going to be pretty somber.
Yeah. Well, I think I'm moving on from somber into the stone cold reality that is failure. This United States team is not going to the World Cup, and that struck maybe about 4 days after I told a lady friend that the United States has a divine right to be in the World Cup. I looked her dead in the eye and said, it is our God-given right, given where this country is in terms of its development and infrastructure, vis-a-vis its rivals in the region.
Yeah.
It is our God-given right to be in the World Cup every single time. That's what I said, and it tempted the soccer gods to smite me, and we're all paying for it now. So I'm sorry.
Don't blame yourself. There's a lot of blame to go around.
Well, I have to take my share, and I'll get right out front of it. Yeah, I did that. I dared the soccer gods.
That's bold, though. I would.
Yeah, I get braggadocious 30 minutes before a home qualifier against Panama.
Yeah,
right. I felt boisterous about it, and it 3 or 4 days later got smacked in the face with the
really smacked
cold,
in the face.
hard slab of reality. So the reality is every team, or 32 teams, will be partying in Russia next summer, and the United States will not be one of them. How do you feel about that?
I feel awful. Pit in my stomach. For the listeners, I'm a Boston sports fan, and I was watching the match with my brother, and we looked at each other, both huge soccer fans as well, and I followed the men's national team of the U.S. since we were kids, and we were like, what does this feel like, is what we said to each other. When the Patriots lost their undefeated season in the 2007 Super Bowl, something along those lines. I was thinking maybe some Red Sox losses before they had won the World Series for the first time in 86 years. That's how it felt emotionally. But the impact is bigger, frankly. There's not like next year, get them next year. There isn't a next year. It's get them 4 years from now.
Yeah.
And
the United States won't play another competitive game until 2019. So yeah, we have a lot of time to stew on this, and it's good. You know, we can go through the grieving process. I think step one is that rage. Did you?
Well, see, that's what I was. The other thing I wanted to say is, it's Thursday. The game happened Tuesday night.
Yeah.
Tuesday night, I was ready to call you up and record our voices on a phone call and post that online as a podcast.
Well, it was too late. I wouldn't have answered.
Yeah, well, I also was like, this is probably not a good idea.
Yeah.
And then yesterday, I was down at Gillette Stadium for Patriots practice coverage, New England Patriots practice coverage, and I wanted to do a podcast yesterday, but we weren't able to. And then I saw some other things that I'll get into a little later in the podcast. But, and now we're finally here today, and I thought, okay, well, the good thing about doing a Thursday is we're not off the cusp reaction. We're able to collect ourselves, think about what we're saying.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how much I'm thinking. I think I'm still black rage.
Good. It'll make for good TV, good radio, good audio, good video.
But we do have a rundown, things we want to hit and talk about. The first one is, how did it happen? I'll let you take it.
How did this happen? The U.S. men's senior national team is not good enough right now. That's the players, that's the coaches, that's the staff, that's the chef, the masseuse. I'm trying not to. It's easy to try and apply blame here, but when you get into it, it's all the way around.
Everything.
Yeah, everybody was not good enough. The number of players playing at the level required to qualify, we just didn't have them. Now, why? Back in 2012, when the United States under-23 team failed to qualify for the Olympics, I wrote about it.
Yeah.
And I said, this generation of players. I looked at the roster and figured, where will they be? Their ages 5 years from now, which would be in 2017. What ages will they be at? Well, I looked at the names on that list, and I'm not going to call them out individually.
Yeah.
I'll call out
You
one.
could if you wanted.
I'll call out one.
Call out anybody.
That is the poster child for what I'm about to tell you about. A man named Freddie Adu.
Yeah.
All right. He was the captain of that under-23 team. He was supposed to be in his prime years. He was the best of that bunch.
That was
Freddie Adu.
That was also his last ditch at living up to any of the hype that came with him.
We're not going to talk about Freddie Adu's career, but the
Yeah.
fact is, I just want him to be the poster child for this lost generation of players who, back in 2012, they were between the ages of 20 and 23. They did not qualify for the Olympics, and for the most part, their careers haven't really gone anywhere since then. Freddie Adu, being the captain of that team, is the poster child for what I'm talking about. Fast forward to 4 years later, the 2016 Olympic team did not qualify for the Olympics, the under-23s. So what you have is two lost generations of players who should be in their prime years, aged 23 to 29, they haven't progressed in their pro career at club level, and they certainly haven't reached the national team, senior national team level. So what you have is a bunch of older guys and a bunch
really
of younger
young
guys.
yeah.
But where the core should be, the core group of players carrying this team forward, they're not there. They've gone missing, and that is an indictment on U.S. soccer and what they've been doing for
15 years, something like that.
Let's call it 10. Let's be nice and say for 10 years.
Well, okay, so we're talking about that generation, but I still think that and I want to separate the words talent and good. We weren't good enough. I agree that we weren't good enough. Talent, we were talented enough as far as the players on the roster, the best 11 we were able to put out there are talented enough to win the game. I think they are. I think that there was, in the game itself, in the final couple of months of qualifying, so much went wrong, and we could dive into the games individually. I've heard a lot of people want to blame Bruce Arena and Jurgen Klinsmann.
They can take some blame.
The blame is going both ways, but the blame goes all around. But I think it comes down to the road matches. There were way too many excuses. All you hear about is how tough is the Hex and how it's all a bunch of crap. And I don't mean to sound like
Taylor
Twellman, but you know what? The UEFA is much more difficult to qualify in. They're in a group of 6 countries, and only one automatically qualifies. The second place goes to a playoff. Do you think it's easy for Italy to go to Spain and get points? Do you think it's and it's not just go to.
You think it's easy for England to go to Scotland to get points?
It's extremely difficult, and it's not just go to Bulgaria and get a draw. It's go to Bulgaria and win by 4 or 5, because if you don't, your goal differential isn't going to be good enough to get the tiebreaker. They're not expected to just get the tie. They're expected to win by multiple goals. And the U.S. did not separate themselves in any road matches.
Why is that?
Who the hell knows?
They're not good enough. We've been watching this team for me and you. We've been following them every game they play and talking about it and picking it apart. And every time it's like, well, okay, they won the Gold Cup. Great. But they didn't play well. They won this game, but they didn't play well. I can count, going back to the United States played Nigeria, I believe, in their last game before the 2014 FIFA World Cup. They were fantastic. Just the style of play, the patterns that they were playing, their movement, it was great. I said, this team is ready to go to the World Cup and do well. Now, fast forward 3.5 years, I can count on one hand the number of times I've watched this team play and say, that was a good performance, good team performance. They did a lot of things right for 60, 70 minutes. For 4 years, they've been just going along. Sometimes they win, sometimes they lose, sometimes they draw, but they have not been playing well. and this is going back long before Bruce Arena. It was going back to Klinsman's time, where it didn't matter who was out there, the chopping and changes. It was just a series of subpar performances. Every now and again, you'll beat Panama 4-0 at home. You'll beat Honduras 6-0 at home. But that was the exception.
Yeah.
That was not the rule.
Not the consistency.
This team has not been playing well consistently. They've been consistently inconsistent for years now, and that is the mark of a team that's not that good or bad.
So, as I mentioned it quickly and then sort of got away from it, but Bruce Arena and Jurgen Klinsmann are getting a lot of the blame, and I frankly don't think they really deserve much blame. I mean, they were the coaches, but Bruce Arena was brought in to put out a fire and get the team through, and he didn't get the job done, but the players weren't good enough. Jurgen Klinsmann, towards the end of his tenure, he had so much inconsistency with his rosters, constantly bringing in different players and trying out different guys, and people were very critical of that. And when hindsight's 20/20, but when you look back on it, Klinsmann probably just wasn't able to find players that he liked and just was going deeper and deeper into the pool. It's like, there's got to be somebody here.
The things that he has done, the changes he's done at on the technical side in these youth national teams, we won't see that bear fruit for 5 to 10 years.
Right.
But for right now, if we're talking about Klinsmann as a coach, yes, he didn't have a lot of great tools to work with.
Yeah.
He didn't. Did he make the most out of those tools?
No, he didn't.
No.
Okay, so
same goes for Bruce Arena.
I agree. All right, let's move on to what went wrong. We've sort of already talked about that, but I think we're sort of saying on a larger scale when we talk about U.S. soccer.
Well, it's two things we can't separate: what went wrong with the team, and what led to that going wrong with the team. Because the team's failings, I believe, are a result of failures in the system. So, do we start with the chicken or do we start with the egg? Where do you want to? Where do you want to start with?
I guess let's start at the very top and talk about Sunil Gulati.
All the talk has been after the United States was eliminated. Everybody's been saying we need to blow it up. Things need to change. Bruce Arena said nothing needs to change, which is
I can't believe he said that. How can he believe that?
He's the ultimate U.S. soccer MLS inside man. He's made his
this program has benefited him more than anybody else almost.
Well, he's also lifted the program more than anyone else. But so what needs to change?
Well, when I think about Sunil Gulati and I look into sort of his history, and I'm not doubting his love for soccer and his desire to make U.S. soccer the most that it can be. I just question if his approach isn't more about how can we get the most out of sort of a ad campaign and putting U.S. soccer on this pedestal that it's not on yet, and not necessarily focusing on let's have a collective effort of how we train players, how we recruit young kids to play soccer, and see that develop into a strong national team, albeit like a 10-year plan. But the thing is, Sunil Gulati has been at the helm since 2006. This is the result of whatever his 10-year plan might have been when he started. This is almost 12 years after he's taken office, and we've missed the World Cup.
Longer than that as well.
As far as just being president.
Oh, okay, yeah. He was very active in U.S. soccer. So he's been a power broker since the late 90s and worked his way up, both in U.S. soccer and in FIFA.
Yeah.
So
I think that they just sort of got it wrong in the sense that, okay, we're going to have the players and we need to think about, what's the best way to, have Michael Bradley be the face of USA Soccer, and we've got Christian Pulisic now. So how much can we involve him in making soccer more popular in the United States? And it's all about the popularity of the sport, as opposed to there are so many kids playing this game. We just have to keep them playing and train them properly and put good youth teams together.
How does pay to play factor into this? That's been a big,
a lot of people
big, almost the instant lightning rod. It's I was somewhat taken aback hearing this coming from people who, if the United States had beaten Trinidad and qualified for the World Cup, would anybody be talking about pay to play?
No.
It seemed like a strange reaction. Now I agree. Pay to play is going to keep this country stagnant where it is soccer wise. I'm 100% agree. I don't see how that is the quick fix to the fact that this team didn't get 2 more points than it should have.
Right.
So it's almost like we're saying, okay, blow everything up and let's look at everything and fix everything. We should be doing that throughout all day, every day.
We shouldn't have to lose for that to take place.
Right. As for the team itself, I thought Bruce Arena was the right man to come in and get this team over the hurdle. And he looked like it. I mean, I don't know what happened after the Gold Cup, but this team won the Gold Cup, and right after that, everything just went wrong within 30 days, 60 days,
30 minutes
within 6 weeks of the Gold Cup final. They lose to Costa Rica, and so there was a mental frailty in this team that reared its head over and over again throughout qualifying. Klinsmann couldn't fix it. Bruce Arena couldn't fix it. We need who are the mentally strongest coaches in the U.S. soccer scene, or possibly a foreign coach. That's really it's a mentality thing.
So how much do you think that, like, when you talk about the mentality, how much do you talk about the players? And let's just think about Josie Altidore, for example. He plays for Toronto FC.
Yeah.
He's with Toronto. That's his club. But his greatest exposure doesn't come from Toronto FC. It comes from the men's national team.
Right.
And his, deal with whatever sponsorship he's got, let's say Gatorade, just as an example, that doesn't come because so many people are turning into the Toronto FC matches on ESPN2 on Sunday night. It's because of the people tuning in to the potential World Cup games to see Josie Altidore play. And does that sort of create a different mindset when you come to the national team? Because think about it this way, and I don't want to, just because it's Messi, it's just such a different thing, but Messi comes to Argentina and they have to go away to Ecuador and they fall behind 1-0 in their final qualifying match, and they have to win this match. And it's not about losing money for Messi, it's about losing, it becomes just the gigantic mark on his career
he's carrying the weight of the nation.
Weight of the nation.
And what does he do?
And he scores a hat trick.
That's the difference between Messi and Christian Pulisic.
Well, there's that difference, but it's not
a difference.
It's a difference, but it's like the shame. It's the mark against his entire career that he can't get it done with the national team, and he cannot allow this to be part of who he is as a soccer professional. Whereas with the American players, it doesn't seem like that's part of their thinking. They aren't worried about the shame of not qualifying, or at least they weren't before it happened.
Yes, they are. They are. These guys are competitors, and they're pros. And it struck me who spoke to the media after that loss in Trinidad. Bruce Arena, Tim Howard, Omar Gonzalez, Michael Bradley, Josie Altidore.
Yeah.
Those are the 5 horsemen of this apocalyptic failure that we've gone through. But credit to them for stepping up there and saying, we weren't good enough. Omar said this goal will haunt me for the rest of my life, the own goal. They feel that pressure. Now, the problem is that pressure is going to fade away within, 6 weeks. They're not going to, I have a feeling when they come back to their MLS teams and their teams, their stateside teams, their every touch isn't going to be booed.
Right.
When David Beckham got sent off in the 1998 World Cup, the fans were killing him for about 6 months, maybe longer. It might have been 2 years. They were on his back. We don't have that kind of scene here,
No.
and I think that really feeds into the problem that players can just kind of go along with their careers and they do the best they can. But
Right. I
they
guess
don't
that's
have
more what I
that-
was trying to say.
They don't have that outside somebody saying, "Hey, what's going on here? You ruined my week with that result."
Yeah, it's the only reactions it seems that they probably get is within U.S. soccer, and it's like
Right.
this sort of and we've talked about it before. How you're either part of U.S. soccer or you're not. You're either on the team or you're not. And I think that at least will change among sort of people that really closely follow U.S. soccer. They won't necessarily just be like rah rah USA. They'll be critical.
Yeah.
They'll say this isn't good enough.
Yeah.
They'll say we shouldn't just bring Josie Altidore back from Europe to play for Toronto because we like seeing him play for MLS team. They'll say if he's going to be better playing in Europe and that means better for the USA, maybe that's what we want to have happen. So the reason I bring that up is MLS the best place? There are a healthy number of American players where the MLS is the best place for them, where their careers will develop the best.
Yeah,
but
most American players.
Yeah, but it seems like, and I put down some names here: Josie Altidore, and Michael Bradley, and Clint Dempsey's older. But is it the best move for their careers and for their careers from a playing soccer standpoint, not a financial standpoint, which I know is a whole different conversation, but is it the best move for them to move from a AS Roma in Serie A playing Juventus and AC Milan and playing in European competition for Michael Bradley to then come to Toronto FC? That Michael Bradley was a better player when he was on Roma. He was challenged more.
He was younger.
He was younger, but he was challenged more. He was with Daniele De Rossi every practice in the same position or relatively same position, and he's learning from him and how to play. And then he goes to Toronto FC, and who's teaching him there? Who's the coach there? What's his competition? It's not as good.
Well, one thing Altidore and Bradley have done at, I'm playing devil's advocate here, but at Toronto.
I'm sorry, I'm so
is
fired
that
up.
they have formed the spine of one of the greatest teams in MLS history.
Yeah.
So I think when these players come back from Europe, they have a responsibility to make their teams great for the first time. This Toronto team they were a laughing stock on the field. Off the field, they've been a juggernaut. On the field, they were a laughing stock. Altidore and Bradley have helped form, and Sebastian Jovinko have helped form one of the all-time great MLS teams this season, and they've been playing some of the best club soccer of their career. Now, what has happened when they get on that flight to join up with the national team, there's some disconnect there. They don't have that same impact and effectiveness. I know the level of competition is marginally higher than in their MLS games, but something's happening. What's happening in that group, in that locker room, where these guys aren't reproducing their club form on a national team level? And that has to go down to Bruce Arena, Jurgen Klinsmann, and it's just not good enough. Their team dynamic has been off for some time here.
Okay, so another thing I want to talk about with the MLS, and I talked to someone that works at Fox Sports who he works specifically on Fox Sports' soccer broadcasting and production, and through some other relationships he has with MLS clubs, has come to the realization that MLS and U.S. soccer do not like each other, are not on the same page, and don't necessarily have the same goals in mind. And their youth academies, like the New England Revolution Youth Academy and the FC Dallas Youth Academy and the Seattle Sounders Youth Academy, are all completely different and are not communicating with each other at all. And there's no sort of common goal. And I was down at Gillette Stadium yesterday, and I walked out to talk on the phone with you, and there was a New England Revolution youth practice going on. these kids looked like they were 12, 14 years old. And I looked out there, and there wasn't necessarily anything special about the practice. It reminded me of nothing other than practices that I went to as a kid. And, they're still kids, but you'd expect something sort of higher level. The only difference was the fact that they were practicing inside Gillette Stadium.
Mm-hmm. And wearing Revolution practice gear.
Right. And, their cones were a little shinier. There was nothing really different about it. And I think that is where there can be a real difference made, albeit pretty long-term plan, but that's where a real difference can be made if the MLS can come together with U.S. Soccer and put together a sort of plan of this is how we're going to train youth players, even until the age of.
But it can't just be MLS. MLS is 22, 23 teams. There's 350 million people in this country.
Yeah.
It's got to be every professional club has to be involved in youth development.
Yeah.
Now, these professional clubs aren't always developing youth better than these youth clubs, especially I'm talking about the powerhouse ones that are in every region. There are names that you can throw out there that soccer fans around the country know, oh, that's a great club. They're sometimes they affiliate with MLS teams or professional teams. Other times they're off on their own doing their own thing. So we can't just put this on MLS. Yeah. What you can blame MLS for is not providing the right competitive environment to have players age 18 and up make the most of themselves.
Right.
We can blame MLS for that, but for not being able to train the best kids out of this whole nation.
Right.
It's more about U.S. Soccer and what they're mandating, and we haven't seen whatever went on between, what year are we in, 2017?
Yeah.
Between 1995 and about 2005 is bearing fruit now on the national team, and something has gone awry because the players that are that should be carrying the mantle are not there.
They're not there. They're just not even on the roster.
Yeah, and that's an MLS problem. That's a U.S. soccer problem, and that's soccer throughout this country.
Okay, so when you look at the young rosters now, and I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but the U17 team seems to be playing well in India in the World Cup. But then you've also got Christian Pulisic is 19. Weston McKennie is playing in the Bundesliga. Was it just a gap, or is there a chance that we're just going to get the ball rolling again? And when 2022 rolls around, U.S. soccer will be right back in the group stage, ready to compete. Is that just
Mark,
an unrealistic thing to think about?
I guarantee the United States will qualify for the 2022 World Cup.
I think they'll qualify. I'm saying, though, will it be any better than squeaking through the group stage and losing, without any real sort of threat to a superior team in the knockout rounds?
Probably not.
Okay.
I have no reason to believe otherwise. The U.S. plays their third group stage game at the under 17 World Cup today, Thursday morning.
Yeah.
I think they're playing Colombia. If they win this competition, maybe I'll get really excited about it. But the problem is that in the United States, something happens when players hit age 18, 19, 20. The environment they go into to develop, they're losing ground vis-a-vis the best of their peers around the world.
Yeah.
Those players who are going to either big European clubs or maybe smaller European clubs or big clubs in smaller nations that are really developing at a faster rate, so that when they are 24 years old or 23 years old, they're going to the Olympics, they're playing first team soccer at a reasonably high level in Europe. They're playing first team games and in a competitive environment, and making money and feeding their families and improving and progressing in their careers.
Yeah.
That happens overseas, let's say in Central Europe, maybe not, England and the UK have problems developing young players, their own young players. But in these other countries in the Central European region, these players are pulling away at a faster rate than, or they're growing at a faster rate than American kids.
Yeah.
And also kids in many, many other countries. So why are we losing ground in those age groups? I have a feeling it's the professional environment that they come into. It's not doing them
any favors.
The justice that.
I don't want to say like what I'm about to say is the reason that they aren't developing, but I do think there is a certain level of thinking possibly that there's been a little bit more accomplished than has actually been accomplished.
Yeah.
And it's such a tiny thing to reference, and I don't mean to,
you hit the nail on the head right there.
But like further than that, like, I follow U.S. soccer on Twitter and Facebook and whatever, Snapchat, and before every qualifying match and like during the training sessions, they'll post these videos, and they'll be 45 seconds, a minute, but the quality is unreal. And I'm not talking about editing, I'm talking about the camera quality. It's like, I also follow, major sports teams of the United States on social media, and none of them have near the quality cameras that the United States soccer team has. And I'm just sort of thinking to myself, like, how much thought was put into this video? Did they like tell the players to like get out of the bus at this point and just like make sure that they're filming things? Like, how much of this is a photo shoot, and how much is like they're getting ready to play a World Cup qualifier? And I just wonder where the thinking is sometimes, because as somebody that I guess sort of works behind the camera a lot, I can tell when maybe something is a little staged, and that shouldn't be something that takes place at all when you're going to Honduras to play a World Cup qualifier. And it's like, big deal, there's barbed wire on the fence around the field. Like, it doesn't matter. Play the game between the lines, get a result.
The business of soccer is good in this country, and at the U.S. soccer level and at MLS level, franchise values are increasing. U.S. soccer has never had more revenue than they have now.
Right?
Yeah, it'll take a hit, but compared to where it was 10, 20 years ago, business is booming.
Right.
The problem is on the sporting side.
The quality isn't booming.
The quality on the sporting side is not booming, and that's what we really need to focus on, rather than let's blow it up, or the systemic changes. The fact is, the soccer itself that this team is playing is not good, has not been good, and there are reasons for that. You have to identify those reasons. It's the players, it's the coaches, and it's the environment that they're working in. For whatever reason, they are playing less than the sum of their parts.
The one thing I will say, I guess, for U.S. soccer, and this is the only thing, is that MLS, I believe, does help these other countries develop their players better than it helps the U.S. So Costa Rica,
it's raised the level of competition.
It's raised their level. But that, I don't think it's an excuse for missing the World Cup at all.
It's one of the excuses, yeah. Players are, I remember the Revolution's Javon Watson told me this past summer about the impact the Major League Soccer has had on his career.
Yeah.
And it's being able to come to an environment, and this is nothing against domestic soccer in Jamaica, but coming to this environment with these facilities, these coaches, these, it's professional.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways, not every which way, and it's not peak professionalism, but compared to what's available domestically, a lot of players from CONCACAF are coming here and doing well. And you saw on the last day of CONCACAF qualifying, the ones that were scoring big goals play in Major League Soccer.
Yeah.
And that is no coincidence.
No.
And also when they line up against these American players, that fear factor that maybe there was once there, they say, hey, I see Michael Bradley every week. I see Josie Altidore every week. I know how to mark Clint Dempsey. These guys are familiar with each other. So all of a sudden it doesn't become, this Goliath to the north coming here with their big players who are playing in Europe or playing elsewhere. There's no myth about them.
Yeah.
These guys see the opposition up close, one-on-one, and they're not scared anymore. Right. And they shouldn't be.
No, they shouldn't be. And, I guess everything we've said is sort of taking credit away from what the rest of the CONCACAF did. But
Panama's been creeping up for 12 years now. I think it was the 2005 Gold Cup.
Right. And they just missed the last World Cup.
They were, a late goal away from the World Cup. So this has been happening right before our eyes. The Gold Cup's been getting a little harder and harder. Still not necessarily a great tournament full of great teams and great players, but it's not USA-Mexico in the final, a given, as it was even 5 years ago.
Yeah, and I tell you, if USA faces Trinidad and Tobago or Panama or Honduras in the Gold Cup, it might mean a little more now. I mean, not to, whatever. Anyway. Okay, so we've really been ranting and raving. We've got what's next for U.S. soccer. I think we've sort of talked about that. I guess the number one question is, will Sunil Gulati get fired or step down or anything? And then who may be the next head coach, if there's any names that really...
Sunil Gulati, U.S. Soccer will elect a new president next year in 2018. Sunil Gulati has not announced that he's running, but it is assumed that he will run again.
Yeah.
He is instrumental and pivotal in the United States' power and influence within the halls of FIFA.
Right.
He represents that now. The United States is bidding for the 2026 World Cup.
Yeah.
If Sunil Gulati goes, steps down, is voted out, I think that would hurt the bid. And this bid it's important. We all want to see the World Cup come in 2026, but maybe we could win the rights to that World Cup without Sunil Gulati.
Just because the other bids are not,
and it's an expanded tournament. Right. But that's very important in just locking that up. That that 2026 World Cup being in the United States. Do you trust Sunil Gulati to pick the right coach following Bruce Arena? I think Bruce Arena right now, I love Bruce Arena for what he's done for U.S. soccer. I have all the respect in the world for him. His position, it's untenable as national team coach. He just can't. He came in to do a job, can't do it. So, new coach. Do you trust Sunil Gulati to pick the right coach to get the best out of this team? I don't.
No, but I think there should be people there that I should be able to trust. I mean, but it's not just up to him, is it?
No, but he probably has more say than anyone else in terms of hiring the next coach. So between firing Bruce Arena the first time, getting Bob Bradley in, firing Bob Bradley, Jurgen Klinsmann comes in. Neither Bob Bradley nor Jurgen Klinsmann completed their second cycle around as coach. So something's happening there between, upstairs in those relationships where they break down, they don't work. Maybe U.S. Soccer decides, hey, somebody else can do the job a little bit better. Bruce Arena can't stay, so somebody else has to come in. Now, amongst potential coaches, two jump to my mind right now. One is Peter Vermees at Sporting Kansas City. He's built a very good team over the span of the last 5 to 7 years in Kansas City, taking that franchise from, being borderline about to go bust to he came in under new ownerships and now they're one of the MLS flagship teams. He's got to be one. Tab Ramos, he's my personal favorite for it because, one, he has worked well with a lot of players in this core group, including Christian Pulisic, kind of, made him into the star on the global youth stage. And just the way his under-20 teams play, I enjoy watching it. It's different. It's technical. The ball's on the ground. Better passing, better movement. They don't always win, but they're a little bit more exciting, more aggressive, and playing that style that Jurgen Klinsmann had talked about, high up the field in the opponent's half. So I would go with Tab Ramos.
Okay. I mean, I wouldn't hate Ramos. That makes sense. It's obviously a very important decision, and I think it's what's
or Jose Mourinho. No,
cool.
Wenger, Arsene Wenger.
Yeah, that'd be nice. Well, I think that as much as I've sort of talked about the focus not necessarily being on the field or whatever, even if there's no massive changes at like sort of the U.S. Soccer executive level, if you're there, if you work at U.S. Soccer right now, I don't care what your main priorities are. I don't care if you're the, the head of the business side of things. You have a wake-up call as the on-the-field product is not good enough, and that needs to be the priority, because if it continues this way, we'll never be able to achieve the financial success that you get only by winning.
The on-the-field product represents everything that you're doing off the field, and it's there for the whole country to see, whole world to see. 32 teams in the World Cup, United States not one of them. What's happening?
I don't know. Okay, well, with the World Cup in the United States, what's that?
No, I said I think we've beaten this one.
Yeah,
fairly well.
Just the last thing, and only because we've got some sort of insider info, a lot of people have been talking about the financial aspects on The Nation and how the biggest losers are Fox Sports and also Nike. But as I mentioned, I talked to somebody that works at Fox Sports yesterday, and obviously there are huge implications with the United States not going to the World Cup as far as their broadcast of the World Cup to the United States, which they paid double what ESPN offered, whatever the contract was, only a few years ago, or maybe like 5 years ago or something. But anyway, Fox Sports publicly will say that they will have the same commitment, and this is according to my source, but they'll have the same commitment to the World Cup as they would if the United States were in it. But the reality is that they sold certain ad agreements with a clause that if the United States didn't make it, then that contract was basically void, and that they'd go back to the drawing board and figure out a new deal with a new amount of money. And that was the deal for 70% of their ad, or they had sold 70% of their ad goal and what they want to get. So now they're back to the drawing board, and it's millions of dollars off the table for Fox, and they don't really know how much money they're going to generate. It's hard for them to realize at this time because
it's less than they otherwise would.
Right. So basically, because it's less, that will probably drastically alter the amount of people that they send to Russia to be part of the broadcast team. A lot of the broadcasts will be carried out from their studios in Los Angeles, and sort of the extended coverage, obviously every game is going to be on, but the extended coverage, the live shows from Russia, recapping the events of the tournament every night, the feature productions that go in depth, interviews, all of that sort of access that probably would have been no problem with the U.S. soccer team. Now they just, you get rid of all that production content, and you have to go elsewhere to find interesting stories that people in the United States are going to be interested in, and it's just not there as much without the national team. So it just completely alters their relation or their commitment. And additionally, he mentioned to me that in reality, Fox Sports and U.S. Soccer, they're not necessarily friends, or Fox Sports isn't necessarily committed to the U.S. Soccer team. They're more just business partners.
Yeah.
And that shouldn't be a surprise, but the NFL is Fox's number one priority. And then it's Major League Baseball and NASCAR and big-time college sports, because those are consistent revenues, and they're bigger revenues outside of whenever there's a World Cup, you know? So it's just sort of interesting because you do see the faces and the broadcast, and you think that, okay, Fox Sports, I'm thinking USA Soccer on Fox Sports, this is a big time match. And it's just an interesting perspective that, the business side of how this really affects everything.
The World Cup's still going to be a big deal.
Yeah.
I can't comment on how Fox is treating it or what
Right.
it's going to mean for them, but I do know that without the United States in the World Cup, it's still going to be the biggest thing going on in summer 2018
Right.
in terms of sports. That's, however Fox wants to cover it and monetize it, that's great. I know for me personally, as somebody who's going to be covering the World Cup, it'll require me to approach this completely different than I would. I'm going to spend half the time covering this Team USA that wasn't going to go anywhere or do anything anyway. Maybe they got out of the group playing like they were.
No.
Probably weren't.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're gonna have to go out and find better stories and tell better stories,
Yeah.
and maybe even tell them a better way than whatever pseudo-patriotic, jingoistic
Yeah.
hat I would have put on for a couple weeks.
I
What I
mean-
mean, it's. I think I'll be better off for it
I
once
was
I get
thinking
past
about
this 7 stages of grief.
how disappointed I am as sort of a U.S. soccer fan. That'll still be there, but we were definitely going to be forcing it with, USA's in the World Cup, what can they do? Because I'm pretty sure we've talked about off the air, when they actually go, like, I'd be surprised if they win a match. And I don't know if you've noticed the colorful scheme of my shirt,
I didn't.
but I wore this because now I can cheer for anybody.
Who are you gonna cheer for? Italy.
I'll cheer for Italy. I am Italian, but Iceland, Northern Ireland, Ireland, the underdogs, but also be cheering for Argentina and Lionel Messi. I won't want Germany to win just because they're so good. I won't really want Cristiano Ronaldo to win because he's had enough success. But at the same time, once he starts to play, I'll probably just be amazed by him anyway. So I'm still extremely excited for the World Cup.
I think I'm gonna swing at the World Cup. Dabble with this team.
Yeah, a little bit of everything.
And try out, dance over here, dance over there. In the end, it's going to be whoever plays a certain way that catches my eye. That's usually when I'm neutral, how I go about picking a team, which is some team is playing in a certain way that really touches my soul, and then I'll ride with them.
It's obviously too far away to really dive into predictions, but
I'm not. No.
France is really interesting to me. I think they're
Messi.
Messi. This is his time.
I'm
guess
not doing predictions.
As much as we sort of hammered the U.S. not qualifying, I guess the point is still excited for the World Cup and get what you deserve, I guess. But as far as us going forward, we'll be back every week breaking down soccer. The world hasn't ended. Matches will be played this weekend. Club teams back in action. World Cup playoffs in November. The draw. Life goes on. So thanks
U.S.
for
soccer and MLS. This is, I guess, the most important point I can make. Are architects of their own demise in this case.
Couldn't have said it better. All right. Well, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you again next week.